for myself, with this story especially, it seems like, and I felt in a certain way, there was no way for me not to deal with what my reaction was to the femicides in Juarez. Or to the fact that, I'm trying to remember now, I know Tanaya Wonder was putting together an exhibit, something, but I want to say the number was like 1,873 women missing in Canada and the U.S. Indigenous women missing in Canada and U.S.
3,000.
It's 3,000?
3,000.
Okay, so much higher than that.
Dead.
That are missing and dead. And then you think of it, that's daily reality. You know, how do we as people live with a number like that or a fact like that? You have to have some response to it. And so I think the hope comes in one speaking to what the truth is, rather than trying to deny it or trying to put it aside. And then also to transform the story in some way. I know someone told me with the story was that this doesn't really do anything on the real, the real level, on the real, in reality, who really is the story saving or helping? I'm like, well, I mean, there's a damage to the body, to the bodies, to the people. And then there's the damage, both psychological and emotional and spiritual, that the knowledge of that kind of violence does to us all. And we have to speak to that, and we have to find a way to heal ourselves and to be able to act. Because if you are in despair, you cannot act. Not in any way, not in an artistic way, not in a political way, not in an organized way, at all. So if anything, I hope that's, where my stories can come in, to bring in enough hope to be able to do something, as opposed to falling into despair.
Yeah, I sense that. The refrain of flesh and bone and blood and all of those tactile moments in the story are about bringing life and trying to breathe back life. And in that way, I think that Indigenous writers, all of us are trying to bring back life, and bring back life both in the metaphorical sense, but also in bringing the return, that return into the 21st century. I just have been working on sites of return. And for us as Native people, those are mound sites. My tribe has a site in Mississippi that is our mother mound, and it's a site where we return for ceremonies. We return for that kind of story about birthing us over and over. It's as a if you will, a never-ending story. And the fact that Native North America, tens of millions of people have lived and died. It's a violent, contact was a violent, continues to be violent, and the missing and murdered women is just one example of the violence of that space, that contact that keeps reverberating through our stories and fiction. So, I don't think, I don't pay much attention to that as a writer. I know someone said, you have 11 mass big murders in Shell Shaker, and I was like, really? Well, that's not much. And not much.
It could be worse.
It could be worse. I could have done more. But and not to be flippant, but our lives as Native women are surrounded by this story, because I carry it on my back. I embody those stories. I'm the first generation out of 4 not to be in a federal boarding school. 4. That's my great-grandparents. And I'm the first. And so as a consequence, I'm responsible in some way for telling these stories. My grandmother's name was Anola Tubby. It means tells and kills. So it's a violence contact in this place that we know.
In some ways, I found it really interesting, and I'm still thinking about it, about the fact that tonight's event is called Our Indigenous Flesh, because I know partially where it is, that the stories are born. You know, I've run several writing workshops with people, and it's very interesting to me when I ask them the question, you know, where does your writing come from? Where do you hear the voice coming from in your body? And a lot of times you hear people say, you know, I hear the voice in my head. I hear the voice up here somewhere. A couple times people will say, I hear it in my throat. I've only ever had one memorable workshop participant who yelled, it comes from my vagina, you know, all across the room. And I was like, great. Because I'm like, I'm a total believer in writing from your first chakra. Like, that's the best place. And you're writing survival and everything. I was like, you're going to get your good, gritty stuff. But it's always shocking to me when people are like, you know, I hear something floating around. I'm like, really? Like, that's what you hear? You hear this floaty thing? I'm like, I'm also surprised by people who say that they sit down to write and don't know what to write about. I'm like, I can see not knowing how to write what you want to write. I can see not knowing how to start it. I can see maybe some emotional or mental kind of, you know, reservation or hesitation. But not having anything to write just seems the weirdest thing to me. Like, that is so alien. Like, I'll sit down, I have tons of, when things are fighting to get out, and I have to figure out which one's going to come out first. But I've never had this, I don't know what to write about today. Let me try this crossword puzzle inspiration thing. Like, I'm totally, like, my mind was completely blown away by that last month, because I just never heard that before, never really thought about that. But I was thinking about how, as you're saying, you know, we carry the stories, but the fact that, you know, that we would title a literary event Our Indigenous Flesh, because really that is where the stories come from. That's right. Where they live.
Inside the body, and we embody them, especially in the writing itself. I think we're embodying a lot of our past, present, and future, because I want to reach that point of future, reach that point of hope. And so for the past 4 years, I've been working with Indigenous writers and playwrights in Canada. So we've been working on embodying the land. How do we embody and carry that land within our bodies? And so we visited about 18 mound sites, earthwork sites. Does everybody know what I mean when I say earthworks? Mound sites?
No.
These are earthwork sites that are usually between 2,000. The oldest site that we visited was 7,000 years old, and it's an earthwork site that was created by natives. I think it's about 7,000 years ago. So these places in which carry a story on the land, and we worked with that kind of placement to try to recall and regain indigenous knowledge, that return of indigenous knowledge to write this play. And this is a very powerful thing, because the earth does speak to you in these places of sacred sites. It is a sacred site, but also comes with that is violence. Some of these sites are very, very disquiet. They're unhappy. And part of this healing that goes with ourselves and our bodies, part of the point of, I think, for maybe, I can only speak for myself, but for writing these stories is to express what I think is happening in the landscapes, happening on our land, and put it out, tell it. And hopefully through that telling, that moment, we're able to heal, bring a closure to that which is not closed.
That's interesting, because I hear you talking about bodies and land, and I'm thinking about bodies and illness and healing, which we were talking about before.
Yeah.
But there was this past summer, Sandra was there, at the Galería a conference in Austin this past summer. There was an interesting panel about recovering indigenous healing practices. And one of the thoughts that occurred to me while I was there was that as a Mexican American, Chicana, I interestingly in the last census put myself down as detribalized Native, which is what I feel I am. I'm very close to my indigenous roots, even though we, have lost all track of what anything is, which landed me a 30-minute interview with the census people. Very strange, but anyway, other story. But it occurred to me while I was sitting at this panel that one of the things that is absolutely crucial to Latinos, particularly Mexican Americans, reconnecting to their indigenous heritages, is that while we are disconnected in that way, we also are disconnected from our ancestors' ways of healing, from their practices of healing, whether that is food, diet, looking at the entire body, spirit, emotions, everything together. We are cut off from that for as long as we deny or are separated from that that connection, that what's the word I want? I'm sorry?
Lineage?
That lineage, that identity. As long as we're cut off from that, we're cut off from the rest. And and there are ways that illness and history live in the body. We were talking earlier about autoimmune illnesses and things like diabetes and things like, and all of these different things that has been carried generationally to us. And in some ways, it almost seems like whether it's healing land, healing bodies, healing communities. I mean, think of the way people have been torn by having to immigrate, having to being forced to move from one land to another, being denied, ancestral lands, and of course seeing the pollution and degradation of that land. All of these different things. It all in some way goes back to, although it might sound crazy to people, that we are still having to return back to try to heal the wounds that began at the conquest. That was such a huge break in the world, that we are still suffering from the repercussions of that, that earthquake in our reality. And that's where the hope comes back in, the fact that we even think we can do this, that we even try to do this.
That our people are recovering, and we're still in a recovery. I mean, it feels like that in some ways. Everybody has this magic number in their head, which is 500, 550, 600 years, whatever. That it's been that 500 years. Oh no. My mother told this story, and we were in Talahena, and that's where our community is. It's outside of McAllister, Oklahoma. And she was 6 years old, and this is brutal. Maybe five is more like it. And this community in Tanny Hill, outside of McAllister, Oklahoma, was filled with Choctaws. So my mother, born in 1932, had never seen a white person, never. So when the band pulled up in the wagon, she couldn't stop staring. And my grandmother, who was in boarding school, blindfolded her and said, "When you can stop staring, I'll take the blindfold off." Because she didn't know what, who, what, when, and where. And she said, "I still remember that looking at a white person for the first time. I was shocked." So that's not 500 years ago. It just talks about the community in which she was raised. Her first language was Choctaw. So we think we know, but we don't know what that contact space and how it reverberated around Native North America. I don't know. And I just want to say something else. We are the walking dead to people. We're the undead. We're the returning dead. People always think natives are dispossessed, dead, dying. Oh, it's just too bad. It's just really too bad that you're all dead. I can't tell you how many people have said that to me. Oh, I'm so sorry, all your people are dead. So, I'm walking, I'm talking, I'm a sentient being. They're all dead? So there is the original zombie. I think natives are the original zombies.